All right. How's everyone doing? Any questions anyone have about finalizing things? The only thing you have left is the final project. So, and the skill areas you were working on. So try and be detailed with the work you were doing there, and um, and that should be it. I don't anticipate any problems with your grades. Everyone's been working pretty well. I mean, done well on the assignments, taking them very seriously, which is good to see. Um,
I
all
did
right.
have a question really
Yeah,
quickly. I know that, so for my tuition reimbursement, I have to get a letter from my professor, and I guess it would be Nicole Blair to submit it for tuition reimbursement, because this class ends after my deadline. Could I email you separately, maybe to write like an estimated grade for me,
I would
so I
be
can submit
I
it?
would be happy to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Let me know, um, and I'll do it from my LaSalle email, so it has my stuff.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. I'll email you and
Know what
Nicole
you
maybe.
need, and I'd be glad to do it. I know. Yeah, it's Christmas time. My God, we've got to get you your reimbursement here.
Yeah, they cut it off at like December 12th, and I think the grades won't post till after then. So they told me that I could get a letter signed by my professor and the director of the program. So
All right,
I'll
good.
just email you both if that's okay.
Sure, I'll copy Nicole on it too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Oh gosh, I'm on tape. I'm on. I'm recorded too, saying all this. I guess I got to follow through. All right. Let me bring up some notes. This is one of those topics that empowerment's one of those topics that really links into so much or of the other stuff that we've discussed in this class. Um, Communication, chapter on power, and the motivation. The motivation had that whole section in we were talking about motivation on psychological empowerment. Uh, so it's linked into motivation, etc. This is one of those areas. There was a gigantic fad in management. I'm trying to think. It was in the '80s. It was the empowerment fad, and I mean, it was out there, and all the man. There were tons of books written on empowerment, an organization saying we're going to be an empowerment organization. And like all fads, people tried it, but it's something that is pretty deep seated in us. It's one of those things that uh, even though the word empowerment might have been a fad at one time, the concepts behind it aren't. And I think as we go through this, you'll probably agree um, the type of workplace you'd like to be in is one that's described here. But it is very difficult to implement um, some of this stuff, and we could talk a little bit about it. But the three skills, what's it mean to empower others? You don't really empower others, but if you're a manager, you create an environment where others feel empowered. And what's it mean empowering yourself? And then a little bit of discussion about delegate. The chapter talks about engagement, and really that's a fancy buzzword for delegation, um, either delegating to individuals or teams. Um, I don't know. Think about your workplace or places you've been. Have you ever had these? Have any of these been true for you? What I think doesn't count very much, or most people with power take advantage, or the people in charge don't really care what happens, or I'm left out of things. If you answer yes to all those, you probably aren't feeling very empowered in your workplace. Um, kind of, you know, we had a whole chapter on power and gaining influence and the notion of power. Well, what is the difference between power and empowerment? Well, empowerment really comes from you, from within. Power is more an external source. I might get my power because of my place in the organization. Um, it's a lot of times we talk about power is I'm trying to get you to do what I want. Um, a notion of power that we have is that the more I get, the less you have, and it does lead to competition. Power leads to conflict and competition. Empowerment, though, is more an internal source. Everyone could have it and feel this way, and it's the capacity to have others do what they want. Um, and the paradox of power is, as a leader, the more power you give away, it actually rebounds back to you in a very positive way, and it leads to a more cooperative empowerment. Um, this is kind of a little bit behind the concept of making the pie bigger, making the power uh, by a lot larger. Here's a couple statements I'll read. You ever hear of Machiavelli? You hear someone manager being called Machiavellian. Well, here's the statement from Niccolo Machiavelli. One ought to be both feared and loved, but as it is difficult for the two to go together, it is much safer to be feared than loved. For love is held by a chain of obligation which, men being selfish, is broken whenever it serves their purpose. But fear is maintained by a dread of punishment which never fails. And, I think that it's been a notion in the culture about leadership anyway, that we have to be very directive. It's better if people are more motivated by fear of losing the job, fear of not getting something. So this is while this sounds pretty stark here, it's been in our culture, leadership culture. But at the same time, here's another a statement down through time, going back to China, 500 BC. And I'll read this one. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, he acts. When his work is done, the people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves. Uh, that's an interesting kind of leader. And what he says is the best kind of leader is one that when he governs, people are hardly aware that he exists. That's a truly empowered environment. Let me talk a little bit about what empowerment means. Um, empower means to enable, and enabling implies creating the conditions for heightening someone's motivation to get things done through the strong sense of personal efficacy. In other words, you're trying to build in a work team a real sense of personal efficacy or competence. I really feel confident. Remember when we were going through the motivation, like we talked about that one model where that one model that talks about how self-efficacious do you feel? Do you feel if you put out a lot of effort and work hard, you'll get things done? So basically what they're saying is what all of this is saying is leaders can create an environment where people feel highly confident and competent. So if empowerment refers to a process whereby your belief in yourself efficacy is enhanced. And the basic assumption under this is everyone has an internal need for self-determination and a need to control and cope with their environmental demands. So if you feel empowered, if you feel you're kind of in control of things, that you have a sense of if I put the effort out, so that's what empowered means. That I feel pretty much in control. And what do I feel in control of? Well, there are kind of five things. at 5 dimensions of empowerment. One is self-efficacy. You feel that you're a real competent. You feel very self-confident and competent. You also believe that you have choice in your life. That there's a sense of self-determination. You feel that you have control or an impact on what you do. Also, what you're doing gives you have meaning and meaning to what you do and security. And you remember that job satisfaction survey I gave you. It covered many of the same elements that are here. So when you get out there and you're in setting a tone or a manager, you can create an empowering environment where these things can flourish with people. That's what this is about. You don't give people power. You can create an environment where people's innate sense of power comes out. People feel empowered when they can work on things that are critical to the organization's success. When you have a bit of discretion and autonomy, you have the ability to make a lot of choice. Whenever there's recognition, when what you accomplish is visible and recognized by others, and you also feel empowered when you're well connected to other people of influence or support. That's why networking is such a big thing. The bigger your network does tend to enhance our feelings of empowerment or confidence. I always felt the best type of employee that could work for me was someone who could leave the next day. They were that confident, etc. That always to me was the best work environment. So some strategies to help build power for yourself and for others. I'm not sure if these are covered in the book. Some of them might be. There's a couple different sources I've looked at over the years, but I think these are. There was a great book out there at one time called "Management by Walking Around." Do you ever hear of it? MBWA. It was a big concept. Management by walking around. Basically, get to know people, and develop your EQ, as it says there. Use your power to benefit others. There's always that fine line between when we are abused by power or we're the abuser. One way to empower other people is enlarge their own sphere of influence. Keep people informed. Make connections. Make heroes of other people. One of the worst things managers can do, and I've heard this complaint time after time, taking your ideas and presenting them as their own. Man, has that ever happened? I don't know if it's ever happened to any of you, but God, I hear that time and again from people. What a way to kill motivation or people's sense of empowerment. There's factors that may lead to lowering of this self-confidence or self-efficacy. An organization that is going through significant changes and people were pretty anxious and fearful, that type of organization tends to deplete people's sense of empowerment. Startup ventures, you might think a lot of people are excited and enthusiastic, but boy, people maybe question their confidence. Competition, a very impersonal bureaucratic climate if you work in one of those, or a very poor communication or network forming systems, very highly centralized organizations. So those are some supervisory styles that don't lead to empowerment or authoritarian environment. Managers who tend to focus on the negative, always emphasizing failures. My boss only notices me when I make a mistake. Any lack of reasons for their actions, carry this out because I'm the boss. Uh, Real arbitrary reward systems, a low incentive in rewards, or a lack of competence-based rewards. So those are some of the supervisory style. And then maybe the job you're in might not, and that's that survey I gave you. The job you're in might not be, uh, maybe you don't have the training support. Maybe the goals are out of whack. Maybe authority doesn't match responsibility. Maybe it's a pretty boring job. Uh, you don't you don't engage in decision making. So these are all some things. Other things, you don't have the resources. You don't feel like you're networking with many people. Very bureaucratic work routines, a lot of rules and regulations, not much advancement. These lack of contact with people in charge. These are all kinds of things that help lead to those kind of situations of lack of empowerment. So um, let me get. So those are some context factors. A lot of people work. Even there's a lot of managers out there who I think are unwittingly creating non-empowering environments. People who want to do the right thing, maybe, uh, but the structure or the rules. Also, in our society, we kind of we in our culture we kind of have a hero mentality of manager. We kind of love heroes in the United States. The one person who can come in and solve all our problems, the one person we can go to who can fix it. We love the hero, and you know it's kind of a myth in some ways because there's very few people who are the rugged individualist who create great things all on their own. But this model, there was a show that was on TV when I was a kid called The Lone Ranger. I don't know if you ever heard of it. May have seen it, but the Lone Ranger, he had a sidekick, Tonto, and he was an ex-Texas Ranger, and the TV show was always he would ride into town, and there would be bad guys, and he would clean up the problem and ride out of town, and all the townspeople would be waving at him. And that pretty much was the show. He was the big hero. The only problem with that model is the next time there's a problem, uh, you need the Lone Ranger to solve it. The townspeople uh, don't solve it on their own. They haven't learned. It's that whole metaphor we hear: teach a man to fish, or feed a man and he eats for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for life. And basically, that's what empowerment is you're trying to create shared responsibility for getting things done. But this model of management, a lot of times people, when they get into managerial roles, the culture, I'm the boss. You're expected to know what happens. If anything goes wrong, it's my fault. And so there's that tendency for you to kind of be a little more controlling, even though unwittingly you maybe not think of wanting to do it that way. You were the one in charge, so and a lot of times people say you the one that got to get it fixed, or if you have a problem on people that work for you, uh, you got to take care of it. So you're expected to be the problem solver. But this model of management, too oftenly commonly practiced and taught, increases a manager's feeling of responsibility, over responsibility for getting things done, and then it blocks the upward flow of communication and commitment from people that work for them. So sometimes people caught up in non-empowering managerial roles maybe are unwittingly doing that. So I'm going to talk about three things you can do to as a manager to be a little more empowering. And one is wherever you're at, build a common vision. You know, if you're in charge of a group, a team, you can build a common vision of what you're about. Um, and just like your organization has a mission statement or a common vision, it's going constantly bring people back to that common vision that everyone can buy into. I have a statement, I think it's true, that in the absence of a higher calling, we all tend towards self-interest. And that's true in organizational settings. If you're in a group of people and working and you don't have a sense of a greater vision or a greater strategy, you're going to tend to do what benefits yourself or your small part of the organization. So keep calling people to a higher vision of what you're doing, your purpose. I think you can never talk about that kind of stuff too much. And then think about a model of continually developing people that work with you, their skills and abilities, a continuous development environment. And then work on developing a shared responsibility team, people that work with you. And a shared responsibility team is that you as the leader are still part of a team, but you want everyone to take responsibility. That the textbook has a nice little chart, a big chart you can read through about when to share responsibility. And that's what the book talks about, when to share it and maybe how to share it. But kind of keep these three things in mind if you're in a leadership position. What can your unit? What's the common purpose you're all trying to get at? People working for you, how can you ensure their development? And then try and create among all of yourself, we're in this together. Um, so those are a few words on empowerment. I find most people would like the textbook says in different studies say about 80% of the people want to grow and want to feel empowered. About roughly 20% are content just to go into the job, just to go in, do their job, and get out. So I tend to think you probably would like to work in an environment like this. So kind of keep this in mind. Empowering environment demands an understanding of that motivation is important. It really demands your ability to interact well with people. So a lot of these things are all backed up with some pretty good research. The reason why it's very difficult, well, I'll talk about this a little bit with delegation, but a lot of organizations want to create this kind of environment, but it's tough. This kind of a leadership style requires some humility. You're not going to be the one that's always recognized if other people in your team are doing the work, even though your style is the reason your team is more productive. You may not get the credit for that. But it does require some humility. There is a leadership book out there. It was written years ago called The Fifth Discipline. And one of the characteristics of a highly successful leader is a sense of humility. Just a few words on delegation. I don't know if any of you picked that to work on. When you think about delegation, how does it fit within your organization? A lot depends on you. What's your attitude toward delegation? You as an individual, and all of you who are super type A's, this might be a tough one because it kind of got for a lot of reasons. And what about the person on the receiving end? Are they ready to feel empowered? Are they going to take responsibility? So some inhibitors to empowering others are your attitudes maybe about people that work for you, or maybe some of your personal insecurities, or even a need for control, heavy duty control over things. Do you have this attitude? I can do it better, or and maybe you can, and it takes too much time to delegate, and I'm the one responsible ultimately for what happens. So I have found that taking the time to delegate and develop is well worth the effort and much more efficient in the long run. Um, it does increase your discretionary time. It does increase the capabilities of people that work for you. You begin to demonstrate confidence. It enhances commitment and, having empowered people work with you. Improves decision making. You have a lot more people sharing with you. I think over time it does increase efficiency. You can begin to work on projects, your priority projects, uh, and some effective outcomes of delegation, higher morale and motivation, a lot more efficiency. People enhance problem solving. Again, more discretionary time. It really helps build relationships, and you do get the job done. So it does, except a good delegation feeds into these five dimensions of empowerment, and as you delegate. And way to empower others through delegation, or the book. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I think if you're looking at delegation, I would really advise the behavioral guidelines in this chapter. Uh, you know, have tell people what you expect of them. Uh, Provide the support. You want people to, people feel enthusiastic as you turn things over. Uh, so it creates all these kinds of things. So that's it. And on all of that. So I would, I wasn't going to go through a lot. I'm not going to go through in detail a lot of the steps of delegation, but a lot of it has to do with, how you set up the delegation, the boundaries you set up, um, the goals. Um, just don't tell someone to, hey, do this job, and then, uh, let them on their own and start yelling at them if they're not doing it right. So sometimes you have to set the boundaries. And people who are less experienced, maybe you are a little more directive in the delegation. But over time, uh, when people, you can almost be hands off. Um, you know, let them know how much decision making authority they have. So that's the delegation. You're almost setting up a contract with someone, and let them have at it. And it's starting to instill confidence and bring others into the decision making with you. So as you move into managerial roles, really look at this. Or even if you have, maybe in your job you have student interns coming in, good place to practice delegation on all of this. So, any thoughts or questions on any of this? All right. I think that's probably one of the shortest chapters, shortest thoughts. But I'm such a big believer in this, in creating this type of work environment. And I really think if you start to bring together a lot of the skills that we're talking about in here, you will begin to create an empowered environment for people. Uh, Being able to deal with conflict, understanding power, uh, developing your own interpersonal skills. It really has an impact on the work environment, and empowered people tend to be much more productive. Have you ever been on a high performance team with a team of people that was really doing something? Maybe whether you were a sports team or a work team. Have you ever had that experience? You shaking your head, Amanda?
Yeah, I definitely have.
What's it feel like?
Um, it feels good, especially when you have like data you can put behind it, so no one can really guess. You can really say like, "Hey, this is what our team accomplished, and this is how it helped the business." I think having facts to put behind it makes you feel more empowered too.
How did it feel among the team members doing it?
Um, Everyone was really happy.
Yeah. Did time seem to fly by when you were working on things?
Yeah, we enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then it ended.
I mean, you're in, you kind of get into the flow of work where time flies.
Yeah.
You feel productive, all of those things. Uh, that's the kind of what you're trying to create with a high performance team. Look at sports teams. You look at teams that win the Super Bowl. Not and everyone to a person says we did it. There was no everyone did their part. You know
Mhm.
that seems to be common in high performance teams. That kind of a feeling. So I know quickly through some of this, but that's part of when you do this delegation, you're doing it to an individual, but you're also uh, can delegate to a team and try and create high performance teams. Think about what I was talking in the class on teams. Those five dysfunctions that tend to happen. All right, did anyone have any questions or anything? Well, get working on your papers or get those skills developed, and I guess I'll chat with you on the 5th. And Julia, I could read your stuff early if I could give you a final grade by the time submission. So communicate with me.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely send you an email.
All right,
All right, thank you so much.
great. Anyone have anything?
Quick question. I know that when we were doing the contract paper,